Hi. I don't like Spider-Man, and I want to talk about it. Now that preview season has ended, and we have seen the entirety of new cards that will be a part of Magic the Gathering for the rest of time, not just in Standard for the next several years, but a part of the game's history, the game's DNA, well, forever. And of course, this is just the first Marvel set we're getting in Magic the Gathering. There will be more after this one, many more. But right now, I just want to talk about this one. I want to talk about Spider-Man. And specifically why this set just deflates me. I'm not even angry. I'm just, kind of numb. And let me be clear that this is not a video about universes beyond. Not really. It's a video specifically about the Spider-Man set. There have now been countless Universes Beyond sets. Universes Beyond for Warhammer and Sonic the Hedgehog, Stranger Things and Doctor Who, and of course Lord of the Rings and Final Fantasy. And while overall, yes, if it were up to me personally, I'd not have brought outside IP into Magic the Gathering, I nonetheless long ago did accept that this is now a part of the game. And aside from the occasional grimace and gripe, I've still continued to play and enjoy this game that I love so much. Hell, I am likely going to name Final Fantasy, a Universes Beyond set, one of the best sets of the year, if not the best set of the year. And I absolutely, enthusiastically am saying to you now, Final Fantasy was a home run. And it's not a personal preference thing. This is not, I just don't like Spider-Man, so now I don't like this new set. Yeah, it's true. I'm not the biggest comic book guy there is. I just never really got into Marvel and DC and all that, and I know next to nothing about Spider-Man. But I also never got into Warhammer 40k. In fact, I kind of always viewed Warhammer as a world that was not my jam, but I considered the Warhammer commander decks some of the best commander decks ever made. And so there's a property you could say I actively did not like, and yet I enjoyed the Magic the Gathering cards and commander decks, and I gave it all an enthusiastic A, and then moved on to the next 100 Magic sets that were about to be released. But Spider-Man? Something's off here. Something is not quite right, and I want to try to articulate that for all of you because, well, a lot of people are curious about my thoughts, so this is me sharing them. As always, you do not have to agree. I just want to explain where I'm coming from when I say that this set, it kind of crushes my soul. Blah 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 blah. Before I even get to my issues with Spider-Man, I want to say that yes, I will still be making many of my usual videos about the set, because my not liking the set doesn't mean I can't look at whether or not it's worth it to buy financially, or discuss those card designs that I think are really interesting for Commander, or Standard, or any of my usual slate of topics that I cover for each and every new set that comes out. I want to help people with a pre-release guide, because pre-releases still rock, and if you're going, I want to do what I can to help you have a great experience. I am capable of saying I don't like something, but still exploring the positives that exist in that thing. So please do me a favor and spare me the, "What? I thought you didn't like Spider-Man, you hypocrite. Why are you telling me Spider-Manifestation and City Pigeon might see Popper play?" Look, this isn't some social injustice that needs protesting. It's Magic's Spider-Man set, okay? And also, I know many of you are very excited about this set, and that's okay. In fact, it's great if you're eager to play with your favorite Spider-Man characters in your Magic the Gathering decks. I am in no way critical of that perspective. I have no interest in yucking anyone's yum. That being said, I have thought about it a lot, and I have come to realize that I cannot bring myself to analyze these cards in terms of their design, nor craft that pre-release guide, nor even just crack a box and chat casually while I open packs without first discussing why I feel this set is worse than other Universes Beyond sets that have come before it. One key difference is that Lord of the Rings, for example, and Doctor Who, Warhammer, and most recently Final Fantasy have been successful implementations of the vision of Universes Beyond, and I strongly feel that Spider-Man is not a successful implementation of that vision. What do I mean by that? Well, in my opinion, the goal of Universes Beyond just bringing new players into the game and making money, of course, is to seamlessly translate an outside property into the game of Magic the Gathering. It is an exercise in storytelling through game design. That's what every Magic set is about. But Universes Beyond creates an additional constraint in that you're working with characters and settings and story beats that have already been established long before the card design process began. In the case of crossovers with other games, there are even prior mechanics designed for an entirely different game system from Magic. For all my critiques of Universes Beyond from a personal taste standpoint, Universes Beyond sets like Warhammer, Lord of the Rings, Final Fantasy, these are triumphs of crossover game design. These products, whether they be commander decks or fully fledged expansion sets, have shown how capable the game system of Magic the Gathering is of accommodating a wide range of outside IP, and that it can do so in ways that honor the lore of the outside universe while still feeling like Magic the Gathering in their own ways. I was highly complimentary of these products when they were released, and on a personal level, while I still would prefer Magic had remained its own thing without outside IP, I was heartened by the knowledge that the most successful implementations of Universes Beyond resulted in great new game pieces that appealed to both fans of the outside IP and established Magic players alike. There have been some duds among the bunch too, don't get me wrong. Assassin's Creed, for instance, felt ham-fisted, rushed, and incoherent. The set was tiny, 100 cards in total, doled out in 7-card Beyond booster packs, and its flavor not particularly engaging to players who weren't already fans of the Assassin's Creed games. And even to those who were, it was pretty dubious. In fact, when I look at Spider-Man, I immediately think of that Assassin's Creed set, because it too felt like a botched Magic set. Though unlike Spider-Man, it didn't feel quite as much of a failure at implementing the Universes Beyond vision. The designs, the flavor, the mechanics, they weren't spectacular, but they were okay. The cards felt like Assassin's Creed cards, and most look fine alongside in-universe Magic cards. Some look jarring, yes, Leonardo da Vinci for instance, but most of the cards look about how you'd expect a Magic plane full of assassins to look, give or take. I feel the same is not true for Spider-Man. Honestly, I don't think this set feels like either a Magic set or a Spider-Man set. It certainly doesn't feel like a Magic the Gathering set. Cell phones and film cameras and laptops, taxi cabs and hot dog carts and electric guitars. Hey, look, it's a bagel and a schmear you can nosh. These are just day-to-day items. They are not fantasy items. They do not feel like fantasy items. All the anachronisms I found immersion breaking in Duskmorn, in Thunder Junction, in Murders at Karlov Manor, all the 1980s Americana and cowboy boots and detective hats, all that has been dialed up to 11 in this set that takes place in the mythical land known as New York City. Final Fantasy, Lord of the Rings, and yes, even Assassin's Creed, most of the cards from these sets didn't look out of place alongside the fantasy universe of Magic the Gathering. The franchises that did stretch this criteria, like Doctor Who and Fallout, were relegated to Commander products, meaning they were only relevant to players who wanted to opt in. They were also self-contained Commander decks rather than complete expansion sets designed to integrate into an existing constructed metagame. You could make a fair argument that in-universe Magic sets were already headed down this path with the aforementioned anachronistic sets, and I'd agree with you. It's not a huge leap to get from cheerleaders and baseball bats to the Isle of Manhattan. But I'm not claiming that Spider-Man swung in out of nowhere. Part of what I find so depressing about this set is that we didn't have to take much of a leap to get to it. Just think about some of the cards we've had in our in-universe Magic the Gathering sets. I truly believe that these cards are a part of in-universe Magic the Gathering sets, so as to allow a set like Spider-Man to have cards like these, so that it doesn't feel as jarring. And so this is what Magic the Gathering has become. Universes Beyond has infected the universes within to the point where they aren't that far off from the most egregious examples of the universes beyond. But despite all that, I could maybe set aside my feelings about Spider-Man and Magic if the set was a coherent and cohesive translation of Spider-Man, but I don't feel like it's that either. Why are there this many Spider-Men in the set? Yes, I know the Spider-Man Noirs and Spider-Dinos and Peter Porkers are pulled directly from the comics and movies and what have you. I know they didn't just make them up to stuff them in the set, but just because these characters exist doesn't mean it's a good idea to include them in such a small set. Why does every random iteration of Spider-Man from across the Marvel multiverse have to show up in this set? If you're not familiar with the source material, it's incredibly confusing to keep track of all these different variations of Spider-Man. And even if you are a Spider-Man fan, is it really better to get a pile of different variants rather than to tell a story that follows one or at most just a few Spider-Men? Sure, it makes sense to include Miles Morales and Spider-Gwen alongside Peter Parker. Thanks to the recent Spider-Man movies, these are the most recognizable forms of the Spider-Hero. Heck, they're the ones that even I recognize and know because I went to go see those movies with my kid. So yes, I can see the reason to include them and maybe a few of the more obscure but fan-favorite Spider-Man variants. But do we really need this many? Spiders-Man and Spider-Cat and Spider-UK? And again, like Assassin's Creed, this really is a small set. 180-something cards is incredibly small for a standard set. And about what? Is this like an eighth of them are Spider-Man variants? Even for people who love Spider-Man, does it not dilute the excitement of a Spider-Man card to have all of these other Spider-Men cards? Trying to tackle a multiverse-spanning storyline in just 180 cards seems like biting off way more than such a small set can chew. There's no discernible story here. It's just, here's every Spider-Man ever and every Spider-Man villain ever stitched together with a few side characters and a handful of disjointed story beats. Granted, a lot of these crossover IPs have attempted to put the entirety of the Outside Universe's lore into their set as well. All 16 Final Fantasy games were depicted in Final Fantasy, for example. Doctor Who had every single Doctor and every single companion. But I would argue that those are not the same thing as what I'm seeing in Spider-Man. Each Doctor from Doctor Who was once the primary protagonist of the show. Each Final Fantasy game is of roughly the same importance as one another, and part of a linear set, the main set. In the Spider-Man lore, on the other hand, all these spin-off Spider-Men are zany gimmicks, intended to demonstrate the vast multiverse of possible Spidey iterations. Essentially, the majority of these Spider-Man variants were intended as jokes, but in a set as small as this one, their presence being on an eighth of the overall cards, it's incredibly distracting. It feels like the set does not take itself seriously. The flavor of many of these alternate universe Spider-Men doesn't exactly justify their inclusion either. Why does Spider-UK draw a card on your end step if two creatures enter? I don't know. Does that represent the character? Why does the masked Meower sacrifice itself to rummage away a card? Why does Spider-Man, Brooklyn Visionary, tutor for a basic land? Now, I will acknowledge there are some brilliant designs in this set too. Don't get me wrong. Spider-Punk granting Spider's Riot is awesome. Giving the Sarah Avenger turn restriction to the futuristic 2099 Spider-Man is great. I think this is a cool card. And I think it's the kind of storytelling through design that Universes Beyond does so well. But they make the many, many examples of much less coherent designs look all the worse by comparison. And speaking of comparisons, I've compared this set to Assassin's Creed a few times thus far, and I think that comparison is extremely apt. From a vibes standpoint, Spider-Man just feels similar to Assassin's Creed. They both feel muddy, clunky, and incoherent. They both don't give the material any room to breathe. Minor characters and obscure story beats clutter the small set list. Even many of the designs feel similar. The pile of Spider-Men in Spider-Man is reminiscent of the pile of assassins in Assassin's Creed. Web-slinging has a similar feel to the free-running mechanic in Assassin's Creed, and both sets even have primary characters that grant the ability to other characters. And both sets have sagas depicting lore and equipment that turn creatures into the face creature type of the set. It almost feels like they're following a template here. Most directly, both sets are smaller than a usual set. There were about 100 cards in Assassin's Creed, and there's about 180 cards in Marvel's Spider-Man. And there used to be even fewer cards in Spider-Man. Mark Rosewater has confirmed as much himself. Personally, I think there's a good chance Spider-Man was supposed to be another Beyond Booster mini set, just like Assassin's Creed was. I wouldn't be surprised if they initially designed the set as another straight-to-modern product that was never intended for standard. Remember, Lorwyn was supposed to come out this year, but it got bumped to next year to make room for a Universes Beyond set. I'm not so sure the set it got bumped for was Avatar. Maybe it got bumped so that Spider-Man, which was originally intended to be a mini booster set like Assassin's Creed, could get turned into an emergency standard set. It would track given Wizards' timeline from production to release. By the time Assassin's Creed came out and maybe wasn't received so well, Spider-Man, which could have already been intended to be an Assassin's Creed-like set, was already in production, contracts already signed, so what can we do? Turn it into a standard set! Maybe that's also why we got so many esoteric Spider-Man variants. Maybe they were scrambling to add another 20, 30, 40 cards to the set and needed to just desperately pull in whatever characters they could think of. That is, of course, all just speculation, and ultimately I could be totally off base, but I had to say it. The broader point is that the set feels just as half-baked as Assassin's Creed did, which is incredibly depressing given that a messy standard set is much more relevant than a messy modern set. You can't ignore a messy standard set like you can ignore a messy modern set. The cards will be powerful enough to see play in standard, and likely pioneer as well. Another thing that I find disheartening about Marvel's Spider-Man is all the various sacrifices Wizards of the Coast was willing to make to bring Spider-Man into their game, such as not getting the rights to put the real cards on their digital platforms. Now, I'm not going to go on and on about this digital licensing nightmare. I already made a whole video about it, and if you want to hear me talk about that in great detail, check out that video here. I'll link it in this video's description. Suffice it to say that the added confusion of there being two versions of every card is just confounded by the fact that I probably would have preferred these now digital-only versions to be the real thing, because at least they're more at home in a Magic set than Peter Porker is, or a subway car, or whatever. But even beyond that, the licensing nightmare hurts because it is indicative of what Wizards of the Coast was willing to sacrifice in order to make this Marvel set happen. They were willing to give up the rights to their own game online anyway. They were willing to commission alternate art and names for every trademarked property in the set, and were willing to suffer the consequences of any and all confusion these alternates cause. They were also willing to make the set too small to be drafted in the traditional way, and even had to come up with a new 4-player variation on draft in order to accommodate this. The upcoming Pro Tour in Atlanta, which is scheduled for the weekend of Spider-Man's release, will not feature Spider-Man as the draft set. That's because Spider-Man wasn't really designed as a set you can draft. So instead, when this set releases, they're sticking with Edge of Eternity's draft. And hey, I love Edge of Eternity's and Edge of Eternity's draft, but this decision is really noteworthy. Trust me when I say that it is literally unheard of for a Pro Tour to feature a 2-month-old draft set over the brand new set that drops the day of the tournament. Spider-Man cards will be legal to play with in Standard at the next Pro Tour, but the set will not be the set that players draft. You know, whenever people raise complaints about Universes Beyond sets like Spider-Man, the response from those who like the crossover properties is often some variation on the phrase, "Let people enjoy things." There's this prevailing sentiment that it's okay to be excited about Universes Beyond, that we should be allowed to like the Spider-Man set. But to that, I've always said, yeah, you should. In fact, the truth is even better. It's not just that you should be allowed to like the Spider-Man set, you are allowed to like the Spider-Man set. If you like the set, great news! You're getting the set. You're getting the set you want, and you get to enjoy it for as long as you'd like. Liking the Spider-Man Magic the Gathering set is the default response. It's the attitude that is specifically being catered to by the company that makes Magic the Gathering. What is frustrating, therefore, is when people push back so hard on the other people, the people who don't like the set, the people who voice their criticisms of this set in particular, and yeah, of the effect Universes Beyond has had on Magic as a whole. So yes, of course, it is okay for you to be excited about Spider-Man, and if you are, I genuinely am happy for you, but I need to say this. It's also okay for me to not be excited about Spider-Man. This set is the antithesis of everything I love about Magic, and it is incredibly depressing that it will be an inescapable part of the game for the rest of time. And that's it. That's how I feel. And I hate that my not liking this set is going to result in people calling me a hater or a whiner. At best, I'm going to be called an old man who yells at clouds, and at worst, an outrage farmer just inventing things to be upset about for clicks. But I'm not. I'm just being honest. I strive for honesty on this channel, always. And if I am being 100% honest here, I'm not even upset about Spider-Man. I'm just really whatever about it. But that's just me. What do you think about Marvel's Spider-Man Magic the Gathering set? Are you excited for it? Are there things you wish were different about the set? Do you disagree with any or all of the points that I laid out in this video? Let me know in the comments below. Truly, I want to hear what you think, and I do hope that what I think has not yucked your yum. There is still so much about Magic that I love and that I enjoy, and if you'd like to spend a bit more time with me enjoying this game, hey, give a watch to the newest episode of Shuffle Up and Play, where I sit down to play Commander with Bosco, Irene the Alien, and Joey of EDH Rec. I even have a Universes Beyond card as my commander. New TCC merch alert! Be sure to check out our new merch drop at tcc.store. This is only available until the end of September, and you don't want to miss it because this drop features a premium hoodie, 2 different styles of TCC shirts, some pins, a beanie, and even stickers! Yes, you heard me right, stickers! Get a free pack of vinyl stickers with orders over $75. Buy some sick merch, get free stickers, and support the channel when you do. Just go to tcc.store.